Welcome to this Rhino tutorial. Today we're going to be modeling a teapot. We're going to be building the base for the teapot, we're going to be building a lid, and we're going to be building a handle. We're going to start by building some basic arcs and curves, and we're going to use those to build the surfaces for our teapot shape. When you open up Rhino, you will see your 4 viewports, so make sure you have those. And then on the left, you have your toolbar with all your commands, and on the right I have a display of my layers, and I have a toolbar with the properties of the objects turned on. Make sure in your perspective mode that you switch on shaded mode so you can see the objects that you're drawing. We're going to start modeling our teapot in front view, so double click the front icon and make sure that you can see your C-plane. The first thing we're going to be doing is building a arc. So in the menu on your left hand side, you will see this command called arc. You can click it here, or you can type in the command line, you can type in arc. So let's click the arc command, and you'll see that it first asks us to select a center for this arc. So I have the grid snap turned on here at the bottom, which makes it easy for me to select a point on my C-plane. You could also type in 0, which will automatically select the origin point of our C-plane. So let's do that. Type in 0 and hit enter to select the center point of my arc, and then we'll start drawing our arc somewhere up top and draw a small arc which we will turn into the lid of our teapot. So we have the first part of our teapot, the arc for the lid, and now we will continue building another arc for the body of our teapot. So let's select the arc command again. It will ask us to select the center of our arc. We will type in 0 and hit enter to select the origin point. Then we want to continue our arc from that first arc that we drew. To do this, we have to turn on the O-snap toggle. So here at the bottom you have this toggle called O-snap, which helps you snap to objects. So if you turn it on, you get this extra row of options, and make sure that at least end is selected, so you can snap to the end of your first curve and continue the arc from there. So now we have 2 arcs. The first one is going to be the lid of our teapot, and the other arc is going to be part of the body of our teapot. Now I want my teapot to be a little bit bigger than just this arc, so I'm going to add a line. So in the same toolbar, we can also select the polyline command by clicking it. So we click the polyline command, and it's going to ask us here in the command line to select the start of our polyline. I want my polyline to start just where I ended my arc. So once again, using the O snap, I'm going to snap to the end and then snap somewhere down here. If it's not as easy for you to select a straight line, you can hold down Shift, which makes it possible to select only in the orthogonal directions. So select a point somewhere below your arc. And then to finish off, we will also draw the bottom of our teapot. So I'm still holding down Shift to make a straight line. And I'm going to end my teapot right in the middle, underneath where I started the first arc. So I'm going to click there. It's going to continue the polyline, but I want to finish it in this case, so I'll just hit enter to end this command. So we now have 3 curves. We have the top arc for our lid, we have the arc for the body, and we have the bottom of the body. Before I turn these into surfaces, I want to join these two because they're both going to be part of the body, so I want to join them together. There's a command here that looks like puzzle pieces, which is called join, or I could simply type in join in the command line and hit enter. Then it's going to ask me which objects I want to join, so I'm going to select this arc and this line that we just drew and hit enter to join them together. Now you will see if I click it, it's just one connected curve. If I go back into my viewports, you will see that the curves that we just drew are all in one plane. So in the top view, it's just going to look like a flat line. So to turn these curves into surfaces, we're going to use a revolve command. So I'm going to select this curve that we drew for the body, and I'm going to type in revolve. You see that it auto-completes and gives us some options, but in this case we're just going to go for a simple revolve. It's going to ask us to select the start of our revolve axis. So this is going to be the axis around which this curve will be revolved into a surface. So in this case I want to select the z-axis. So I'm just going to select the endpoint of our arc and then draw a line straight up. The next thing it's now asking us is to specify the angle of the revolve. In this case I want my teapot to be a full circle, so I can just select this full circle option here in the command line. Now you see that the result is a surface, but it is not a closed shape. So at the moment, if I select it, I can see here in my object specification that it is an open poly surface. So it's not really a solid volume yet. So to close this teapot shape off, I'm going to cap the hole at the top. And then later on, we're going to give it some thickness and hollow it out again. But for now, we're just going to make a closed volume. So I'm going to select this body and type in cap. What cap does is it looks for holes that are in a flat plane and then it tries to close them. So when we type in cap and hit enter, you see that it has now found that hole at the top and closed it with a surface. Now if I select my body, you will see that it's a closed solid poly surface. So let's repeat those steps for our lid. So let's select that curve that we drew, that arc that we started with for the lid. And let's make another revolve. So we'll type in revolve, hit enter, specify what the axis is going to be. So that's going to be just a straight line on the z-axis. And then specify that we want the revolve to be full circle. Now you see that we have a surface, but it's just a surface. It's not a closed solid. So we'll type in cap to give it a volume, and now it is a closed poly surface. So I can use the gumball to move it up so we can see what it looks like, and you will see that it is a closed shape. So I'll just hit Ctrl Z to move it back, Ctrl C to move it back, and we can move on with the next part of our modeling process. So the next thing we're going to model is going to be the spout of our teapot. So we're going to use a basic geometric shape for that. So we're going to go into our toolbar here and open the menu under the solid creation. So if I click the little arrow, you'll get more options of basic solid geometries that we can build. In this case, I'm going to use the truncated cone to build our spout. So we will click on the truncated cone. And I'll just start by drawing it in the top view somewhere next to my kettle, and then we'll position it where it needs to be on the teapot. So it's asking us to draw a base for the cone. So I'm just going to select a point and then specify a circle for how big I want my spout to be. And then it's going to ask us where I want the top to be. So I'll give it a height or length. And it's going to give me the option of what kind of diameter I want at the top. So I'm going to make it a little bit narrower than our base. And once I click it, it's going to finish up that command and it has formed a solid poly surface. So now I need to position the spout on my base, and I'm going to use the gumball command for that. So here at the bottom you have the option to turn on and turn off the gumball. And you see that these arrows and these lines appear, which are very useful to transform and move your shapes around. So in this case, I'm going to use this blue arc to rotate. And then I'm going to use the arrows to move it around. I'm going to press it slightly inside the body of the kettle, which is going to make it easier to join later on. Now, if I look at my top view, I want my kettle to have its spout in the center, so I'm just going to move it till it's nicely aligned. And then in this perspective mode, I'm just going to make sure that it looks like it's the right size. And I can also use the gumball to scale it. So for example, I want my spout to be a little bit bigger. I can use this blue square to drag it out, or when I hold down Shift, I can scale it uniformly in all directions. So once I have the spout positioned and scaled in a way that I like it, making sure that it's slightly inside the body, we can move on and start building the handle for our kettle. So for the handle, we're going to go back into the front view. So double click front to go and make that full screen. And now instead of the arc that we used at the beginning of this tutorial, we're going to open up that menu and use the second type of arc, which is an arc where you specify a start point and an end point and a point along the arc. So let's click that command and specify the start of our arc. So I want my handle to go across over the top. So I'm going to select a start point somewhere here and an end point at the other side of my kettle. Then I'm going to specify a part along the arc, which allows me to make a nice big round handle or a smaller handle if that's what you prefer. So you can select that point anywhere you like. And we have our arc that we can use to build the handle. So let's go back to our viewports by double clicking front view. And let's have a look at what that handle looks like. So to give this handle some volume, I'm going to click on that curve and use a command called pipe. What pipe does is it allows you to select a radius and sort of sweep that along that curve that we drew. So we'll type in pipe and hit enter. And then it asks us to specify a radius for the beginning of our pipe. So let's do this in perspective mode, so we can see how it looks next to the other objects that we drew. And I'm going to give it a small radius so we get a nice narrow handle. So I can just click anywhere to specify that radius. And it's going to ask me what I want as my ending radius. So I could make it bigger or smaller, but in this case I just want the radius to be the same as I had on the beginning. So I'll hit enter so it copies that same radius. You could specify other radius, for example, making it thicker at the middle, but I just want it to be the same radius all along. So I'm going to hit enter to accept, and it gives me this pipe-shaped surface. So we see when we select it that it is also a closed solid poly surface. If it isn't a closed solid poly surface for you, that might be something in the pipe commands. So I'll just delete it and show you just to make sure. When you select your curve and type in pipe, make sure that the output is set to surface and that the cap is set to flat. By having these settings, you make sure that you end up with a solid poly surface instead of an open surface. So I'll just hit enter a couple of times to keep that radius the same. And there I have my closed poly surface pipe shape. Well, I think this shape is a little bit boring, so I'm going to use the gumball to change it a little bit. So the first thing I'm going to do with the gumball command using this blue arrow is make it a little less round. And then also with the by selecting the green arrow or the green square, I'm going to stretch it out a little bit to make it a nice flat handlebar. You see that that curve that we drew isn't moving along with those commands because it's no longer linked to that surface that we drew. So if you want, you can delete that curve, or you could select the hide command up here in this toolbar so we don't have to see it anymore. So right now we've drawn our surface for our handlebar. We have made a closed surface for our lid. We've made our body, and we have our separate spout. The last thing we're going to add is a little a topper for this lid so it's easier to pick up. And I'm just going to draw a basic sphere to do that. But you could also consider adding a cylinder, or maybe you want a torus-shaped topper. I'm just going to select a simple sphere, specify where I want the center of that sphere to be, and give it some size and select a point to give it its final size. Maybe I'll move it down a little bit until I'm satisfied with what the shape looks like. Now the next step is going to be joining these volumes together. So I want my body to be joined with my spout, I want this lid to be connected, and I want the handlebar to be connected to the body. So the first thing I want to do is join this sphere that we made with the lid. And to do that, we're going to use a Boolean command. You can find it here in the menu, or you could type in Boolean to find all of the different Boolean options. In this case, I'm going to be using a Boolean union. So you could type that in, or you could select it here in the toolbar. So it's going to ask me to select the surfaces or polysurfaces that I want to union. So I want to select this lid, and I want to select this sphere, and then hit enter when you're done. Now it's telling me up here that it created some meshes, so it has succeeded. And if I select it now, you can see that it's now one volume and it's still a closed solid polysurface. We can do the same thing for the body and the spout. So let's click the Boolean union command, select the spout and select the body and hit enter when we're done. Now you see that those two have been joined together. And now I can make it hollow. So let's remove the lid for a moment. I'll just hit the hide objects so we don't have to see it at the moment. And let's use the shell command. The shell command allows us to give it some thickness and to hollow out the inside of a shape. So we'll type in shell and it's going to ask us what thickness we want. So I could select this and type in any thickness in millimeters. So for example, 3 millimeters. And then it's going to ask us which faces we want to remove. So in this case, we want to remove this top face and we want to open the ending of the spout. So we're going to select that as well. So after we're done, we hit enter and it's going to calculate what that looks like. So now if I look at it in perspective mode, you can see that the spout has been opened and connected to the body. Now you can see that the handlebar is still sort of sticking through our main body shape. So we're going to have to split that first before we join it to the body, because otherwise you're going to keep having this part here on the inside. So instead of using the Boolean union straight away, we're first going to use a Boolean split. So we'll select Boolean split, and it's going to ask us which surfaces or polysurfaces we want to split, which in this case is the handle. We hit enter. Then it's going to ask us which surfaces are the cutting surfaces. So in this case, we want to use the body to cut that handlebar. So let's select the body, hit enter. And now you should see that this handle has been trimmed into a shape that fits exactly onto the body. And on the inside, you have a separate polysurface, which we can delete. And on this side, you can also delete that. Now, if you box select, you will see that there's also a separate volume for the part of the handlebar that's inside the teapot. So the box select, if you draw from the left side to the right, you will select only what's inside your box. If you box select starting on the right side, you get this box with a dashed line and you select anything that the box touches. So draw a box from the left side to the right to select just that polysurface that's inside your teapot, and we can hit delete to remove it. We'll do the same thing on the other side, so draw a box starting on the left side to box select that surface and delete it. Now we just have the surfaces that we need. So we have the surface for the handlebar and we have the surface for the teapot, and we can use Boolean union again to join them together. To get our lid back, we go into this hide and use the right mouse button to show. When you type in show, everything reappears that you've hidden before. So that curve that we had hidden is also back. So we can hide that again if we want. Or what I like to do is use layers to collect all of the curves that I don't want to see anymore. So right now we have created a closed solid poly surface for our teapot body, and we have made a lid that nicely fits on top.